Hi, Michael. Hi, Ed.
Hey,
Good evening.
Anissa.
How are you?
Good.
Hi.
Who's Jason?
Jason looks like a teacher.
Hi there.
Hi, Jason.
Am I in the wrong section?
You are, but we'll move you to the right place.
Okay.
Christine, if you're logged on, Jason's here for public testimony later.
Hi, Jason. How are you?
Hi, Michael. Nice to meet you.
Good to see you too.
Big one did a big tinkle.
Excellent.
Hi, this is Cindy, the sign language interpreter. Were you expecting us this evening? Can't hear you. You're muted.
Hello, yes, we were expecting you. We're waiting for the chair, Counselor Edwards, to come on to the hearing.
Okay, that's fine.
Okay.
There are two deaf people who are, I believe, are scheduled to testify.
So,
Steve Weiner and
John.
yes,
Okay,
John.
I didn't have those
John.
names, so if someone could send them to me, please. I don't know who that,
I don't know John's last name, but Cindy, you did have the right name for the first person.
Okay, let me see if
Yeah.
I can tell you who it is.
I can dig it out if I have to, but
I might be able to find it quicker.
Yeah, we'll need to have it for Christine to let them in.
Right. John Wilcox, Wilcox.
okay, and what was the other name? I'm sorry.
That's all right. Steve Weiner, Weiner.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome. And could you give me any idea where they're at in the list of testimonials? Or it's just random?
I don't. It's usually the chair will let them in.
Okay, that's fine.
See them right now. But
We do have a panel before public testimony.
That's fine.
And
I think
you know,
good.
if the chair is okay, I'm happy to allow them to go at the beginning of public testimony if that just logistically helps us. We can ask Counselor Edwards when she comes on.
Okay. My colleague Sherry Kuhn, COON, is actually the other sign language interpreter. One interpreter can't do this meeting alone.
okay, I'll let Candace know. Shirley.
Sherry,
Sherry.
SHRI, Kuhn, COON.
Great, thank you.
I just moved Sherry
Oh.
over, Christine.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Candace.
You're
And
welcome.
Candace, I'm going to move Timothy Smith over.
Okay.
Okay, I'm here. This is Sherry. I'm the other interpreter. I was on and I could hear and see you, but nobody was hearing or seeing me. So let me get my lighting working right. Okay, you can hear me now, right? And see
Yep.
me? Great, thank you.
And anyone else that can hear us that's in the attendee list, if you have a telephone number or what looks like your BPS ID number, you'll need to change that to match the name in which you've signed up for public testimony as, please. And anyone that maybe is signed up as under their child's name or somebody else's name, please change your name. That's how we'll know to move you up when it's time for public testimony. The same for anyone who's just using their first name. If you are planning on offering public testimony, please make sure that it reflects your name as you signed up for public testimony.
Hi, Nisa.
Hi,
Hey, so just, is everyone all on? Or so
we
far?
are just waiting on Chris Leone. Which let me just see if he's in the,
Yeah,
oh, there he is. I'll let him in.
okay.
I'm also waiting for Kathleen Riley from Siegel Associates. She may be, she's going to join us as well. And, well, there's Chris, wonderful. And Attorney Duddy is running a little late. She's had another hearing. I asked her to attend as well.
And is that Attorney Duddy, is she DU?
She's BTU attorney,
No, but
She-
how do you spell the last name?
DUDDY.
Okay.
She goes by Tina, but it's Christina.
Okay.
Yeah, so the reason she's here is she drafted the home rule petition originally for us, so we wanted her to be here with us tonight.
Great, thank you.
Yep.
So just when, and then when she arrives, Michael, can you just make sure she raises her hand so we'll keep an eye on the
Mhm.
attendees so we can.
I'll
know-
text her right now.
Good, thanks.
Raise her virtual hand.
Yes, her virtual hand.
I'm just waiting on a list of arrival order. Do you have that, Nisa?
For counselors?
Yeah.
I have a list.
It goes
Counselor.
Flynn,
Oh, I'm sorry. Do you have one? Because I can text it to you.
send it to Counselor Edwards, yes. please.
Okay, perfect.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And Counselor Edwards, our panelists are all here with the exception of that attorney who we'll just let in when she gets here.
Okay. I have an Ann Minishino.
Yeah, I think she's just here for regular testimony. And then
Correct.
Steve and John, their hands are raised. They will need the ASL interpreter for their testimony.
Okay.
So if we could, Madam Chair, have them first for public testimony, that would be helpful.
All right. So Steve and then John will go first. Okay.
And then Chris Leone is now with us. So Madam Chair, when you are ready, we are ready to start.
Excellent. Just getting the order in. All right. All right, excellent. All right, just pulling up testimony. We'll get started, or my intro. Good evening, everyone. I'm City Councilor Lydia Edwards, Chair of the Committee on Government Operations. It is Monday, November 9th, and we are here today for a virtual hearing on Docket 0981, Petition for Special Law regarding the Boston Retirement System and the Alternative Superannuation Retirement Benefit Program. Councilor Sabi George sponsored this proposal and is referred to the committee on September 16, 2020. In accordance with Governor Baker's March 12th executive order, we're modifying our open meeting laws to relieve public bodies of certain requirements, including the requirement that public bodies conduct its meetings in public space. City Council will now and has been conducting this hearing and others virtually via Zoom. This allows us to balance the ability for us to do our jobs with public safety. The public can watch this meeting via live stream at www.boston.gov/city-council-tv. It would also be rebroadcasted at a later date on Xfinity 8, RCN 82, Verizon 964. For public testimony, written comments may be sent to the committee email at ccc.go@boston.gov and will be made a part of the record and available to all councilors. We will take verbal testimony at the end of this hearing. We have a number of people already signed up. If you have not emailed Christine O'Donnell to request the Zoom link and have your name added to the testimony, we encourage you to do so now by emailing Christine, that's CHRISTINE .O'Donnell, that's ODONNELL @boston.gov. Quick summary of the proposal before us. This proposal is a home rule petition that will amend the General Laws, Chapter 32, Subdivision 4 of Section 5 relating to superannuation retirement for members in the teacher's retirement system. Superannuation retirement allows members to contribute 11% of all regular compensation. Under the current law, participation in superannuation retirement is mandatory for all teachers hired on or after July 1st, 2001. Any member of the teacher's retirement system or any teacher who is a member of the Boston retirement system before July 1st, 2001 may elect to participate in the alternative superannuation retirement benefit program. Said election needed to be made on or after January 1st, 2001 and before July 1st, 2001. Any member of a contributory retirement system who transfers into the teacher's retirement system or transfers into a Boston retirement system as a teacher may elect to participate in the alternative superannuation retirement benefit program, provided that said election occurred within 180 days of establishing membership in the teacher's retirement system or the Boston retirement system. This home rule petition would allow members that did not meet the election deadlines to contribute 11%. The home rule petition will also allow school nurses to contribute 11%, provided that the members elect such contribution within the time period after passage of this act and provide make-up contributions at the rate of 11%. There is an ASL interpreter for this hearing. Timothy Smith, Esquire, Executive Officer of Retirement Board, is also joining us today. I will now, before I turn it over to the panelists, I wanted to introduce by order of arrival all of my colleagues who are here and allow for them to make very, very brief opening statements. In order of arrival, and who is the lead sponsor of this, we have first Councilor at Large, Anissa Sabi George, followed by Councilor Flynn, then Councilor Braden, and then Councilor Baker. Councilor Sabi George.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and thank you for everyone who's in attendance today, the panelists, as well as the teachers and nurses and others who are here for public testimony. Very happy to be the sponsor of this hearing for this home rule petition that will essentially allow for our educators and nurses to increase their retirement contributions so they can retire sooner rather than previously determined, although there's quite a bit of discussion around what was originally assumed to be a retire date has shifted because of some challenges that we're here to discuss today. We'll hear more about the history of why this policy change is necessary and timely from the BTU, as well as the impact of this retirement policy on our educators and nurses. We'll hear from Kathleen Riley from Siegel Consulting, who is the lead author of the actuary study on this proposed policy change. We're also going to hear from Mike McLaughlin, who's a member of the Boston Teachers Union and representing the the future retired teachers, and Chris Leone, who's a former colleague of mine from East Boston High School. I hope that tonight we'll understand better the TARP, the Teachers Alternate Retirement Program, also known as the Retirement Plus Program, and better understand how this home rule petition will impact our teachers, nurses, and the Boston retirement system as a whole. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Sorry. Thank you very much, Councillor Flynn, followed by Councillor Braden, Councillor Baker. Check and see if any of the colleagues have joined.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Edwards, and thank you, Councillor Asabi George as well. Just want to say briefly, teachers, our educators, our nurses are some of the most dedicated public servants we have. They play a critical role in our city's future and for our children. They deserve the opportunity to increase their contribution to the retirement system and have economic security and peace of mind in retirement. I want to say thank you to Councillor Sabi George for sponsoring this and looking forward to hearing about the testimony, but I know where I stand in this. I support it. Thank you, Councillor Sabi George.
Thank you, Councillor Flynn. Councillor Braden.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you especially to Councillor Asabi George for bringing this home rule petition forward. I strongly support the concept of allowing our educators and our school nurses to increase their contributions so that they can secure their retirement going forward in the future. So that's all I have to say. I'm interested in and excited to hear what folks have to say and how this program would work. Thank you.
Councillor Baker.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Nice to have you back. And also I'd like to thank Councillor George, and I'm just more here tonight to show my support. Thank you.
And then just very briefly for myself, if I understand this correctly, and I'm sure the panelists will break it down for us, this is an opportunity to really allow for us to save money, but also for people to retire with more dignity and more benefits. And that is a good balance. I feel it's a fiscally responsible measure so far. And it's one that also allows for people to opt in to give more. I look forward to hearing from the panelists what would be the opposition to this, if any, what would be concerns, and if they're looking forward to other personnel in BPS, such as paras or other ones who might also want to be able to participate in this program, if they can or cannot. I tend to want to favor inclusion of people who want to pay more into the system so that they can retire with dignity. So that's, I look forward to meeting and hearing from all the panelists, and I'm just going to pull them up and introduce each one of them. Each one of the panelists, I believe, have some brief statements, and I'll let them all speak if that's okay with my colleagues, and then we will open up for questions from my colleagues, and then we will move on to public testimony, which I think is a balanced approach because a lot of us are learning at the same time. So our panelists tonight.
Madam Chair, can I ask one question, just a point of order? We have 2 ASL interpreters with us this evening. I'm not sure if the participants who require this interpretation need to be in the room in order to see interpretation. So while you manage the meeting, can I let those 2 members in? And they're also first to testify later.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Councillor Sabi George. In terms of our panelists, we have Michael McLaughlin, Elementary Field Rep from Boston Teachers Union, Christopher Leone, teacher at East Boston High School, Boston Teachers Union, Christina Duty from BTU's Boston Teachers Union attorney, and Kathleen Riley, Senior Vice President of Siegel Consulting, and Timothy Smith, Executive Officer of the Boston Retirement Board. All right, so is there a particular order, Councillor Sabi George, if you had them?
I would like to offer an order that I think makes sense, in that I would like to lead off, and then I think Timothy Smith, it would make sense for Timothy to go after me, and then Kathleen Riley from Siegel Associates, and then Mr. Leone.
I would assume that Mr. Smith is going to, Mr. Smith?
Yes, Timothy Smith second.
Oh,
then Kathleen Riley third, and then Mr. Leone fourth. And Tina Duddy is here just as an observer. and to ask any legal questions about the home rule petition, but not testifying.
Very well, Mr. McLaughlin, go ahead.
Thank you. Good evening, Madam Chair, and thank you. Hello, residents of the city of Boston and members of the Boston Teachers Union participating remotely. Thank you, Councilor Asabi George and fellow city council members assembled here this evening, as well as Christine O'Donnell and Rachel Nagan for all your help and assistance getting this off the ground and scheduled. Tonight, you're going to hear testimony, opinion, and data about home rule petition docket number 0981, petition for a special law regarding the Boston retirement system and the alternate superannuation retirement benefit program, specifically called the Teacher Alternate Retirement Plan, TARP for short, or Retirement Plus. So the question the home rule petition begs you this evening that you answer in the affirmative is to reopen the eligibility window for non-TARP Retirement Plus for teachers hired pre-July 1st, 2001. For the record, my name is Michael W. McLaughlin. I'm currently, I am a Boston resident, currently a Boston teacher on leave working for the Boston Teachers Union as the elementary field rep. I'm also the parent of 3 former Boston Public School children and 1 current Boston Public School 8th grader. Additionally, I've been an elected trustee on the Boston Retirement Board for the past 12 years. Just a few short years ago, I was contacted by East Boston High School teacher, Mr. Chris Leone, who you will hear from later tonight. Now, Mr. Leone had a very compelling issue. Several teachers at his school and colleagues throughout the district had contacted him and were feeling disenfranchised about not being in the Retirement Plus program. The reasons were varied. However, as you will hear tonight, there is a commonality to these reasons. Boston Public teachers have emailed testimony previously, and some of you, I believe, have copies of that testimony with you. Some will also give testimony live tonight that can be categorized in 4 to 5 very compelling reasons why Retirement Plus TARP should be reopened. Those categories are: teachers never received notification of TARP or Retirement Plus. A second reason, teachers thought they were enrolled as the deduction rate shown on their pay stub was 8+2, and the plus meaning Retirement Plus, as in R plus for TARP. Another reason, a third reason, my deduction rate for retirement on my pay stub was 9+2%. 9+2 in very simple math we all learned in 3rd grade is 11. 11% is the Retirement Plus TARP deduction rate. So there were many teachers who thought they were already enrolled in TARP Retirement Plus and didn't need to do anything. And even after 2001, thought they were enrolled in this Retirement Plus program. So another reason was that the retirement deduction in 2001, the year for the enrollment, showed 11, even though it was actually 9+2, leading a teacher and many teachers to believe that they were already enrolled. There was a misprint in many teachers' deduction rates. Also, as a compelling reason, was fax back then was a very acceptable way to communicate important documents getting to the right agency in Boston governmental departments. Many faxes were reported never received by the Boston retirement system. Probably no fault of their own either, just that the volume of faxes was just overwhelming and put such a demand on their system, but nonetheless negatively impacted many educators. Second last reason, there were many educators who transferred from another school district, and the Boston retirement system put them at 11%, and then many years later put them at a lower rate, a non-TARP rate, and they told them they were not TARP eligible. And then years later, mailed them a refund check without explanation. An important detail for you to hear tonight is that this is not our first attempt at trying to reopen the eligibility for Retirement Plus. We have tried, albeit unsuccessfully, at the State House, in that we have tried to meet with state legislators. We have emailed them. We've had a letter writing campaign and in-person meetings. But the strategy at the State House ended with no success for us. We have met with Mass Teachers Association and the Mass Teachers Retirement System too. There was no appetite in those institutions at the state level to reopen the window for Retirement Plus. So we prepared, with the help of Boston Teachers Union Counsel Tina Duddy, the home rule petition you see before you tonight. Of importance here is that it will not cost the city of Boston anything for this home rule petition. The liability, as determined by Kathleen Riley of Siegel Associates, is with the state. A small detail, back in 2006 or 7, all the assets that represented Boston teachers was transferred to PRIM, the Pension Reserve Investment Management, and PRIT, the Pension Reserve Investment Trust, at the state level. So all the appropriations for all teachers and their retirement benefits is paid by the state to the Boston retirement system. So if this passes, it'll be state liability, not Boston liability. But it should not go unnoticed that if this does pass, it will actually save about $38 million in teacher salaries for the city of Boston and the Boston public schools. After the 858 identified non-top teachers get another bite of the apple and retire, and then are replaced with newer, less costly teachers. So I ask you to please pass this home rule petition and allow Boston public school teachers who, because of no fault of their own, to join the Retirement Plus TARP option. Thank you so much, and I hand it off to Timothy Smith.
Madam Chair, I'm not sure if Timothy Smith is here to offer testimony or to be here in case of questions specific to him.
Okay.
Well, I could offer just a little insight there. Timothy and I have discussed previously, prior to tonight, what his role could be, and we came to an agreement that he would give a summary for us about the laws of TARP, how TARP came around, how it came to be, and what it means.
Yeah, that would be helpful.
So if he's not here, I'd be happy to do that.
Tim, are you in agreement for your summary? Is Tim here? Tim's here, right?
We may need to come back to Tim. I don't see that he's.
We'll come back to Tim. So was it Chris after Kathleen?
No, Kathleen next, then Mr. Leone.
Yes, Kathleen. Sorry.
Okay, are you ready for me?
Yes.
Okay, great. So Siegel Consulting, and I am the actuary for the retirement system. We completed our biennial valuation of the retirement system in the middle of this year. It was the valuation as of January 1, 2020. And when Michael reached out on behalf of the BTU to have us do this study, after getting approval from the retirement board, we used the data that we used in the valuation to do the analysis. And we used the same assumptions that were used for the actuarial valuation as part of this analysis. So we didn't really need to look at any new assumptions or any different retirement patterns, because those were already set for the teachers that are already enrolled in the TARP program. Let me just briefly describe what the TARP, from an actuarial perspective, how the TARP program works. It allows the retirement allowance of a participating teacher with 30 or more years of service to receive an extra 2% for each full year of service in excess of 24 years. I know that's a lot of words, but essentially what it does is it allows teachers with 30 or more years of service to receive a higher benefit than they otherwise would have without this program. The benefit is still capped at 80% of final average salary, just like the non-TARP benefit. So in a sense, what it allows teachers to do is retire earlier than they otherwise could have with a higher benefit, but no instance do they exceed that 80% benefit. So to do the analysis, we had to look at the data that we received for the actuarial valuation. I'm going to spend I will summarize the data we use just so you can get an idea of what the numbers look like and any weaknesses in the data, because it's always important to understand what we were looking at when we did the analysis. There were a little over 6,000 records reported as teacher records in the data. And they don't identify which teachers participate in TARP and which teachers do not participate in TARP. So the metric that we used is we looked at their contribution rates. And if their contribution rates were 11%, we assumed they were TARP participants. And then we dug a little bit deeper and we found that some teachers weren't coded as 11% contributors, but when you looked at their actual contributions, they were 11% of pay. Kind of consistent with what Michael said about some of those, inconsistencies of the reporting of contribution rates and how people looked at them. We tried to sort of double check the data to make sure it made sense what we were looking at. So just under 5,000 of the records had a base contribution rate of 11% and were assumed to be in TARP without really any question. And that left another little over 1,100 records that did not appear to be in TARP. So we looked at those records to see whether it made sense that they weren't in the TARP program. And we also have to consider that since these teachers would have to pay back or buy into the program by paying the difference between the full 11% contribution and what they were making, not everybody will make that choice to buy in, whether they figure they're going to work a longer period of time anyway, or they don't have the resources to buy in. For whatever reason, we don't think there'd be 100% participation. So we obviously excluded any teachers who were already past the 80% maximum. They wouldn't gain anything by joining the TARP program at this point in their career. And then we looked, and there were a number of teachers who were hired at older ages who also wouldn't benefit from joining the TARP program, because by the time they hit those 30 years of service, they'd be so old that they probably would have retired anyway. When we took out those teachers, we were left with 858 teachers who appeared to like they would benefit from joining the TARP program. We did note a small number of those teachers in that group of 858 looked like they already should have been in the program. They were fairly recent hires, and we couldn't figure out why they weren't in the TARP program. There's probably a reason, whether it's a data issue or whether they transferred in from another retirement system. We think 858 is the maximum number that are eligible, the maximum number of teachers that are eligible for the TARP program. And as I said before, we assumed for the purposes of the analysis that all would elect, but most likely all will not elect. We included, if you have the written report, we did include a distribution of those teachers by service, so you could get a feel for how long they had been in the retirement system. Of those 858 teachers, 85 had 30 or more years of service. 158 had between 25 and 30 years of service. 283 had between 20 and 25 years of service. And 332 had less than 20 years of service. So it's our understanding that these teachers would need to pay the difference between their current contribution rate and 11%, and that interest would be charged on the payments using the actuarial interest rate, which for the teacher liabilities was a 7.15% interest rate. So the total amount of those teacher buybacks, if all 858 teachers participate, is $15.4 million money coming into the retirement system. But the other side of the equation is what is the additional cost? And there's an additional cost because these teachers that can now retire sooner with a higher benefit. To put the teacher liability in context, for the Boston retirement system, we separate out the teacher liability from the non-teacher liability because the state is responsible for the retirement benefits payable to teachers. So for all of the teachers in the Boston retirement system, active, inactive, and retired, the liabilities total about $4.3 billion. For these 858 teachers that we're talking about, their liability is about $404 million. Their liability would increase if we assume that they're eligible for TARP, and the increase in the liability is $49 million. So a little over 10%, about 12% of their liability. But that $49 million would be offset by the $15.4 million that would be paid in employee contributions. So the net impact on the unfunded liability is about $33.6 million, about a 1.3% increase in the unfunded liability that was reported for the teachers in the most recent valuation report. Let's see. Then to get a sense of what the state is setting aside to fund the teacher liabilities, the current appropriation by the state to fund the teacher liabilities for fiscal 2021 is about $163 million. We estimate that the state has some flexibility in how they fund the liabilities of the teachers, and they would have some flexibility in how they fund this additional liability. But if they fund it in proportion to their current funding policy, it would add about $3 million a year, roughly, to the Commonwealth's appropriation. And that $3 million a year is assumed to increase at the same 9.6% that the Commonwealth appropriation is projected to increase. I think that those are the key points from the memo that we prepared for Michael.
Thank you very much. And then I think we had Chris Leone. You're on mute, Michael.
And then
I think
Timothy is
Mr.
here.
Smith is here. Yeah.
Tim is here, but he was having trouble unmuting himself.
Yeah.
Do you
And
mind
if I
we
could
go to
just
Tim
add one
first?
thing to Kathleen's report. She had mentioned, thank you, Madam Chair. Kathleen had mentioned that there'd be a financial obligation if this does pass and teachers are allowed and they want to do this. So just a quick back of the envelope calculation I did for teachers who are at the 9+2, and it could be somewhere between $20,000 to $27,000. So for someone who is at 8+2, it could be, well, I'm sorry, that was for 8+2. For somebody who's at 9+2, it'll be somewhat less. And if there are teachers that are at 7+2, which I doubt there are many of those, but there could be, it would be substantially more, as you would obviously see logistically with, and obviously math-wise, those are smaller percentages versus the 11%. So the difference would be more depending on your current deduction rate. Thanks.
Just a point of clarification, Michael, since we're on this topic, and I'm a little more confused than I was, sorry, but you mean in terms of their catch-up rate? No.
No.
Okay.
Well, yeah, I guess you could say it's a catch-up rate. So your current deduction rate, as Tim will explain, is determined by the year you were hired. And the top rate is 11.
Tim might be able to answer the question
Yes.
I have before we get out of order. All right.
It is confusing.
So we'll go ahead and turn it over to Tim. Tim.
I'm going to ask Tim to unmute. Here he goes. Tim, I think you're unmuted now. But we can't hear you.
Or see you, Tim. I don't know if you're on the phone.
Madam Chair, maybe we just go to Chris Leone.
Yep. Chris?
Sure. Okay. Good afternoon, and thank you to our city councilors for taking the time today to listen to our testimony, my testimony, and the testimony of my colleagues. It means a lot to know that our legislators are willing to hear our concerns and address this issue. I could certainly give you an off the cuff account of everything that has transpired over the last 2 years, but in the interest of time and knowing my personal tendencies to go off on a tangent, as teachers sometimes do, I think it's better that I read a prepared statement so that I can cover all of the necessary information pertinent to our situation and give you a personal account of kind of the road that I think all of the members in this meeting have traveled and all my colleagues have traveled over the last 2 years or longer. I do think that Mike did a great job of summarizing what happened, but I'm going to lend a little bit of a personal touch to this. Okay, so my name is Christopher Leone, and and I spent the last 20 years teaching English, language arts, and media at East Boston High School. I've lived in East Boston for my entire life, so I'm pretty dedicated to this community. It's important to note, though, that before I started in the BPS, I began my career teaching reading at Revere. So if I hadn't started in another district, I might not be here today, and please keep this in mind as I continue my story. And I started in Revere in 2000, and I came over to Boston in 2001. This all began with a discussion I had with a colleague back in January of 2018. One morning we were musing about when we would retire and talked about retirement plus, and then we started analyzing our pay stubs. She told me that her retirement was being deducted at a rate of 11%, while mine said 9 plus 2%. Well, 9 plus 2 equals 11, right? And there's a plus sign there, and that must mean I'm in retirement plus, right? So I wasn't very concerned. And I sent an email to the Boston Retirement System, and this is what I was told, and I'm going to read this part verbatim. The Boston Retirement System did withhold contributions from your pay at 11% from 1/1/2002 to 6/30/2005 because you're a new teacher in our system. When the Boston Retirement System applied your transfer in from Mass Teachers Retirement, they noticed you were being held at 9% and not at 11%, and no notation was made on the letter that you elected with them to join Retirement Plus, also known as TARP. A letter was sent from the Boston Retirement System to Central Payroll to adjust your retirement contribution from 11% to 9 plus 2%. An over-deduction refund check dated 7/22/2005 was paid to you in the amount of $2,185.23. You are currently contributing at 9 plus 2%. I estimate that so long as you remain in full-time position, you could reach the maximum retirement benefit of 80% at age 64 with 35 years of service on 6/30/2035. So according to the letter, I learned 9 plus 2 does not equal 11. 9 plus 2 is not retirement plus. I was paying 11% for 4 years when the retirement system sent me a check for overpayment. The stub did not say the words, "You're being removed from TARP," or "You will no longer be deducting at the 11% rate," just overpayment. And one of my colleagues actually has the stub. Well, it says overpayment. And I assume that was in their error. And who doesn't cash a check if it says overpayment, right? So I'm not thinking that it was my fault. Most importantly, I was going to have to work another 4 years if I wanted to reach 80%. And I was, to put it mildly, enraged. So after I received the email, I literally ran around my building trying to find out if any of my colleagues who started when I did had the same issue. And I found 18 in my building alone. That's almost 20% of the staff, including some administrators. And I'll leave it to the testimonies to detail their reactions. I won't say them here. I called Mike McLaughlin, who generously listened and offered to hold a meeting that turned into several more meetings and the formation of the Retirement Plus Committee. Since that time, to make this long story short, we have uncovered hundreds of teachers, nurses, and administrators, all with incredibly unique and compelling stories, who thought they were enrolled in what is known as TARP, but now may have to work 3 to 5 extra years because of what we have concluded over our investigation, a flawed legislative action back in 2001. Here are some of the situations you'll hear about today in greater detail. Many had transferred from another district like I did and were kicked out, even though they had been paying 11% for several years. Some had paychecks that were recording 11% deduction for decades. 2 of whom I personally know had been paying 11% for over 18 years. It says 11% in their check. But when they contacted the retirement board, were told that this is an error. They are not enrolled in TARP and will subsequently have to work 3 to 5 years longer than they thought. Some had changed jobs within the system and had not been informed that their biweekly deduction had been adjusted from 11 to 9 plus 2. Some are nurses whose teaching status had changed. Some had moved addresses and did not receive the notice. Some were on maternity leave. Some had been told their fax had never been received. Some didn't meet the deadline, even though the date was June 30th, a Saturday when no one was in the office. Many believe that seeing 8 plus 2 or 9 plus 2 in their pay stubs is retirement plus. Many believe that 9 plus 2 equals 11. If all of you are confused by this, imagine how we feel. The additional testimonies you will hear today are from honest, caring, and most importantly, sincere education professionals who have dedicated their lives to nurturing Boston Public School children for the last 2 decades, some even longer. None of us wanted to be rich or famous. We all embraced public service to help make Boston a better community, and after a proud career, have the chance to retire with some level of comfort, stability, and dignity. During our investigation of the TOP rollout 20 years ago, we have discovered many flaws that we feel should be reviewed with the ultimate goal of allowing all of us the opportunity to buy back in and retire when we rightfully should, as was told to us when we were hired back in 2001 or before. I could go on. In retrospect, many of us would not be here today if the retirement board had simply opted every new hire in to 11% like they did in 2002. And if anyone wanted to jump out of it, then they could have signed a piece of paper, right? So because of that, we're all here today. However, this is not a day of blame or accusations. We're looking forward to the future. All we want is the ability to rectify this issue and pay our rightful shares so that we may retire when we were originally formed under the TARP policy. Based on actuarial data that you have heard, we have also uncovered that allowing us to do so will save the city of Boston tens of millions of dollars in teacher payroll over the next decade. This is a rare win-win for everyone involved. In closing, I ask that you thoughtfully listen to our stories and proposal, consider supporting this home rule petition, give something back to the hundreds of education professionals who have dedicated their lives to guiding the children of Boston Public Schools, and ultimately make us all whole. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is Tim available?
I just brought Tim back.
Hello?
Yay.
Hey. I'm so sorry about that. I don't know what the problem was. I apologize.
Okay.
I know you've got a long night, so I'll launch right into it. I was asked to speak on 3 topics. First being the Teachers Alternate Retirement Program known as TARP and how it operates.
Excuse me, please.
Yep.
This is Steve Weiner. I know that, let me fingerspell it. I know that the previous interpreter, I wasn't able to see everything she said. So I wasn't sure if you were calling me yet for testimonies or not. So I just want to clarify.
Thank you very much. We are not yet calling everyone for public testimony. We just called Tim as we were trying to have him testify before. Thank you, Steve. And after Tim speaks, the city councilors will ask questions, and then we will open up immediately for public testimony, of which he will be first in line.
All set?
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you for that clarification, Steve saying. Thank you.
So the second point I was asked to discuss was the history of the system's outreach during the enrollment period for TARP back in 2001. And finally, I was asked to give an explanation on how retirement contributions are determined. As to TARP, as everybody knows, it came into existence in 2000. In essence, TARP allows an additional 2% of retirement allowance for each full year of credible service in excess of 24 years, up to the maximum of 80%. The earliest a TARP member could retire with 80% is at age 56 in 36 years of credible service. In comparison, the TARP member's counterpart under regular retirement would be at 57.6% with the same age and credible service. The additional retirement contributions made by a TARP member equates to an extra $600 per calendar year. In order to be eligible for the TARP benefit, a member must have at least 30 years of credible service, with at least 20 of those being in a teaching position, and pay the contribution rate of straight 11% on all regular compensation. As to teachers, and I think this was discussed earlier, but I was on and off, as to teachers who transferred into Boston from MTRS, which is the Mass Teachers Retirement System, with membership dates prior to 6/30/2001, it is significant to note that because an election opportunity is irrevocable, any transferee into Boston who elected to participate in TARP or fail to so elect when an opportunity was available shall not have another election opportunity at Boston for the TARP benefit. The rights of such transferee shall be governed by his or her previous election or non-election, as the case may be. This is a scenario that we have seen over the years in Boston. As to the system's outreach, I note that teachers across the state had between January 1st, 2001 and June 30th, 2001 to decide whether or not they wish to participate in the TARP program. This election or non-election, as I said earlier, is irrevocable. I preface my comments with the fact I wasn't present at the board back in 2001. Everything I've been able to assemble comes from various documents in the possession of the system. But I note the following. There was a general seminar session conducted at the BTU on 11/28/2000. One-on-one counseling sessions targeting those who intended to retire within 5 years were held on 10/25, 11/2, and 11/13 of 2000. One-on-one counseling sessions took place between December 18th, 2000 and January 6th, 2001. There was at least one mass mailing. Updates were made available on the BPS website, and one-on-one counseling sessions took place the weeks of February 12th, February 19th, and February 26th, all of 2001. As a result of the outreach, over 2,600 teachers elected the top benefit by the deadline of July 1st, 2001. Finally, a few points about retirement contribution rates. It is a subject of confusion. Contribution rates are those monies that are taken each pay period in the form of regular compensation. Generally speaking, in order to become a member of the retirement system, one must be an employee who is permanently employed and works at least on a half-time basis. Like everything else pension-related, contribution rates are set by Massachusetts statute and found in General Laws, Chapter 32. The system has no discretion in what contribution rates to use and is driven by the person's membership date. Right now, the law says that those who have membership dates before 1/1/75, and we do have some of those left, they contribute at 5%. For those whose membership date was between 1/1/75 and 12/31/78, we take 7%. For those who have a membership date between 1/1/79 and 12/31/83, we take 7 plus 2. What that means, there's 7% is taken from the first 30,000 of regular compensation, and 7 plus 2 or 9% is on everything above 30,000. For those who have a membership date between 1/1/84 and 6/30/1996, we take 8 plus 2%. Again, 8% on the first 30,000 and 8 plus 2 or 10% on everything above. For those who have membership date after July 1st, 1996, we take 9 plus 2%. So 9% from the first 30,000, 9 plus 2 or 11% on everything above. I hope that's been helpful. I greatly apologize for the problem with the audio, but please feel free to ask any questions.
Thank you so much. I think we've had all of the panelists speak today, and we do have some people who are available to answer any legal questions we may have. So what I'll do is we'll just go in order again of arrival, starting with the lead sponsor for any questions that the council has. And we'll allow the panelists, if you just want to either raise your hand or kind of physically note if you have the answer or thoughts, then that's fine. We'll turn it to you. And then we will then turn over to public testimony, starting with Steve, as indicated. So Councillor Sabi George, then Councillor Braden, and then myself. For folks, Councillor Flynn and Councillor Baker had to attend another meeting, but they have expressed their thoughts, I think, already on this. So Councillor Sabi George.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and thank you to everyone who's offered testimony and explanation and shared a deeper understanding with us about this. As involved as I have been in some of this, I'm still, continuing to learn. I have a question quickly about the 858 teachers or educators. This is more than just teachers. So if someone could just express to me who this would include, and maybe a description about the opportunity to opt into this. So teachers would have to opt in, is my understanding, and pay the difference in that retirement. And then have we looked at all about the potential number of teachers or educators that we think would take advantage of this opportunity?
I think I can answer most of those questions. Thanks to the Boston retirement system, they were able to identify nearly 135 different categories of TARP eligible employees that currently work for the Boston Public Schools. Now, under the challenge here and confusion lies in that there are three entities here: Boston Teachers Union, Boston Public Schools, and the Boston Retirement System. And each of these agencies define educator and teacher somewhat different. Each of these agencies include teacher, educator, include different sets of people within those buckets. But the one that really counts here is the way that the law defines educators with the Boston Retirement System. And what it comes down to in some ways, and Tim Smith can help me and weigh in on this as well, it pretty much comes down to are those people who hold a license with the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education and are in some type of classroom or daily contact with students. So for example, a registrar who's not in contact with students necessarily in what they need to do in their job responsibilities. They don't require a license, a DESE license, to be a registrar. Those types of jobs are not TARP eligible, but you'll see people like nurses. They have a DESE license to be a school nurse. Teachers, obviously. People who are speech and language pathologists, occupational therapists, adaptive phys ed, vision, instructional, even instructional technology people. There's I can't go through the list of 135, but I will provide that information to you, Madam Chair, and to the other city councilors after this hearing. And thanks to the Boston Retirement System. Now, if you wouldn't mind, Councilor George and Asabi George, would you repeat the other? I think you had two other questions.
Yeah, the other question was that from the, Kathleen talked about the 858 teachers or educators that are identified. Of them, how many have we predicted about how many of them may opt into this, should this pass both the council and the State House?
Well, Kathleen, go right ahead.
What we included in the numbers is all 858. So we did not attempt to put a percentage on top of that. It would be roughly linear. So if 80% of the group elected in, we think it would be about 80% of the liability, but some teachers are on an actuarial basis more costly than others. But roughly, I think just a linear analysis, a linear estimate would be the best way to do it. But we did not, the numbers we've given you are the full 858.
And then within that full number of 858, have we determined how many are, which teachers or how many educators, I'll use the phrase educators because I know it's more than just teachers, how many educators are within how many years to possible retirement should TARP be in place? So, Chris Leone could be 4 years from retirement, Chris?
No, a lot more than that, but it will actually add 4 years to my working life. So I might be able to retire at 60 rather than 64 if I were.
Right. So have we done an analysis in that 858, how close some of them are?
Yeah.
Should this
I'm a little bit off in my numbers, but I have about 147 who already have 30 years or greater out of that number. Then I have 214 that would probably be able to retire at the passing of this home rule petition. Then 68 within 1 year, 75 within 2 years, 80 within 3 years, 79 within 4 years, and then there are 96 within 5 years striking of retiring. but my numbers
then
don't match up identical. I don't have 158 in that total, so
Right.
those are all estimates.
Right,
But
so
they're very
that's,
close.
I mean, that's helpful. And have we determined within each of those groups what the average contribution they would need to make to opt into this program?
Well, once again, it depends on your contribution rate of whether it's 8+2, 7+2, 8+2, or 9+2. But it could be somewhere between $12,000 to $27,000. And
So-
I know that's a broad range.
Yeah.
But it does. I mean, we could add that to our actuarial study. If you
I mean, I
that's
think that
helpful.
it's probably helpful for each of the
Okay.
individual members to understand that. For me, the range is fine for me. My colleagues may feel different, but I think it's important to note that colleagues would have to pay that, make that contribution in order to buy back in should this pass.
Right.
Mm.
Agreed.
Right.
I'll make a note of that. Thank you. Good point.
Yeah, I think that's it for me right now, Counselor Chair Edwards.
Thank you, Counselor Braden.
I'm just curious, I'm sure other school districts experienced this similar challenge, and have they been successful in correcting the situation and making it whole?
No, there are only two systems that in Massachusetts that have the Retirement Plus. That's the Mass Teachers Retirement System and the Boston Retirement System. This is only in Massachusetts, right? So I think Mr. Leone could probably speak to what he's heard from colleagues in other districts outside of Boston Public Schools.
So originally, we actually chased to try to make this a statewide initiative. There were bills, I believe, going through, and I can't remember their names, Mike, but the
Representative Cusack
from Braintree and from Cambridge as well. So they were actually, there are some bills out there that had been floating around for a couple of years. So, and I actually spoke to two representatives from the retirement board. They know that there's like a wave coming of teachers across the state who are in the same predicament as we're talking about right now with Boston Public School teachers. So there have been attempts. We decided to go off on our own because we didn't think we could attach ourselves to their bills. But this is an issue that's statewide. This is not just exclusive to us. So I'm sure that, we might be leading the way here. And if this passes, there are certainly teachers across the state that will catch on to this and be moving forward with similar legislation.
I'm just thinking about the chances of having a home rule petition passed. So if it's a burden is carried by other teachers across the state, then there's a lot more pressure can be applied to the legislators to view this home rule petition favorably. So that's probably a good thing. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor Braden. I think I'm it, and I just had a clarifying question. I think this was for Kathleen or whomever. So this is, I understand that this is based off of the report. This would save the state and the city's money. But when I hear that people would be able to retire early, but at a higher rate, isn't that kind of normally my thought is it's just cost neutral. So you get out earlier, so does that make sense?
No, so the retirement liabilities do increase because the expectation is that additional retirement benefits will be paid. But because the state is responsible for teacher retirement benefits, we've assumed the state would be responsible for these additional liabilities. So earlier when I said the additional unfunded liability was $39 million, that's a liability that we assumed the state would have to be responsible for because they pay for teacher retirement benefits.
So
The
again,
savings to the city are the potential salary savings for these teachers retiring earlier than might be expected. And then you have to look at the analysis of whether those teachers are replaced or not to determine whether the savings are temporary salary savings or real long-term salary savings.
So so the assumption is that that some of these teachers will start retiring because they can, and if they qualify for this, and that we would be hiring less tenured teachers so that their salaries based off of the union step system is just lower. That's where the savings comes to the city.
Yes.
Versus higher tenured or longer tenured teachers staying in the job longer because of this system, as Christopher explained, makes him stay 4 years longer in order to get the benefits that he would have if he had just was able to retire earlier. Am I correct?
Yes.
Okay. So that's where I got a little bit confused. And again, the buyback or the catch up. So the difference in if you elected now to get in there and say, I want the full 11% taken out before I retire at 80%, I have to pay the catch up. I have to pay the difference for the years that I wasn't paying the full amount.
Correct.
Just for my education now, is that I can just elect for that to come out of my paycheck?
Tim might want
doesn't-
to comment on how that would, whether that would be a lump sum.
Oh, sorry.
We could
Yeah.
do it either way. We either give them the opportunity to pay lump sum, or typically we give 1 through 5 years for installment plan.
And that lump sum we talked about being between 12,000 and 27,000 about.
I haven't calculated that. I defer to Kathy or Mr. McLaughlin on that.
Someone mentioned about 27,000.
Yeah, it's a big range that I've given you this evening, and we'll get further into the details on that and give you a smaller range.
And I asked in my introductory remarks, this is my last question, about other people being able to opt into that. Now, this is my ignorance, so I appreciate your education about members of BPS. Are paras part of this, and could they opt in? Are there ways? No, I'm saying no from Councilor Sabi.
So this program came from the State House. It was a legislated action that changed Chapter 32, and it only, believe me, I get this all the time, but it was only made available to teachers, and those in the teacher category.
Teachers and nurses.
And those in that the state in retirement language consider teacher eligible TARP members.
What about if
professionals are not?
What about a para who worked for 10 years but taught for 20, right? So maybe you move from a para to a teacher, and as long as you had that teacher 20 years of teaching in, is that possible? Or there's some that can fall into that category?
Okay.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. Well, I wanted to make sure, and substitute teachers obviously fall within this as well. No. Yes. No.
No. No. Well,
unless their time is counted.
If they were, well, that has to look. You have to look at a case by case basis for substitutes, in that they need to be licensed, I believe, and then they need to be contracted and contributing. So once you're a member of the retirement board, you're always a member of the retirement board, and when you're working, they're taking deductions. So if you were in some way a member of the retirement system and then became a substitute teacher in like 2010 or even today, you would be at that 11%. But prior to that, back then, if you were a substitute, you wouldn't be eligible to be in. You wouldn't have gotten the ability to be in TARP back in 2000, 2001 if you were a substitute teacher.
So therefore, they're not part of a pool of 858.
No, they are not. Credible service is defined in some ways as predictable work that it's consistent and predictable, and substitute teaching is not predictable and consistent.
Okay.
I would note, if I may, that we do have members that toggle between teacher, we'll call it teacher broadly speaking, but TARP eligible positions to non-TARP eligible positions, such as paras. That's a good example. That happens quite frequently in the Boston system. So somebody may, to Chris Leone's point, may have taught for 20 years, and then the last 10, or maybe even the front 10, they spent as a para. So as long as they hit the 30 years with 20 years in a teaching position, they would be eligible for TARP.
So, and I just want to, I want to be clear, I'm excited about this, but, if we're talking about reforming a system and reforming an error in a system, is there any room to reform it towards being more inclusive of substitute teachers, of these folks, or is this just not the vehicle for this?
I think I would just note that if you're expanding it to non-teachers, you're expanding the obligation to the city, because the city pays for the benefits of non-teachers and the state pays for the benefits of teachers. So if you expand it to non-teachers, it will have an impact on the city of Boston's funding costs.
And if I could jump in as well, one thought I have is you'd have to change the definition of teacher in the statute. Because, as Mike McLaughlin noted earlier, it requires a license. So
I understand. Yeah, no. Go no further. With home rule petitions, the less controversy you have, the better. We shouldn't be dealing with the definition of teacher and trying to also do this as well. And I think that could invite opposition if you're going to define who is a teacher at the same time. So that helps me. Thank you so much, Kathleen. Thank you so much, Michael. That I'm clear now. So I don't have any other questions, and if it's okay with my colleague, Councilor
I do have one just quick question, Madam Chair. Mike, we were talking about the number of teachers and where they are and how they are close to retirement, the years. Do we have average pay on those teachers? So the 147 that could take advantage of this immediately, what is their average or likely pay?
I do not.
I mean, teachers right now are maxing out at, if you're maxed out at Lane and education, you're at 115, I think is the max.
Yeah, you're very close. I did an average of all step 9,
Yeah.
and it's 112.
Yeah.
That's the max step.
So there are some assumptions we could make, especially around the teachers like that are within 3 years of retirement, that they are all at 100, probably 100, 105 plus.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, easily.
So I think when we talk about the opportunity for significant savings to the city, it comes in salaries. And when we think about what's the starting pay now for a Boston teacher with a master's?
Master's is 65, step 1.
Yeah, so that's, significant savings that could be realized over the next few years should this pass and teachers opt in and buy into this opportunity for sure. But I think like Kathleen said, the savings are in salaries. If we are at least initially in those early years as those newer teachers both add to education and years of service, but then also as we see the district, the population shifting, there is an opportunity for some real and legitimate savings or more permanent savings, although I would argue and advocate for more teachers. And perhaps this is a way to, not to go off too far, but as a former teacher, we sometimes come on, as Chris says, we sometimes get sidetracked, but this is also an opportunity to add teachers perhaps appropriately into inclusion classrooms, for example. And, so we've got multiple licensed individuals, multiple in a classroom and not one individual with multiple licenses. Anyway, that's a topic for a different hearing that we'll certainly have. But I appreciate all of you here today, and that's it for me, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. At this point, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to public testimony to allow for folks that we have about 70 people who want to speak. And so we want to get, so first of all, we're going to ask that you speak no more than 2 minutes. And if you can speak under that, we really appreciate it. Oftentimes there's a lot of people waiting and they just never get to speak. And then we did promise Steve and I think John to go first because our interpreters are here. So we will have them speak first. I will be having to step out a little earlier than I expected from this hearing, at which point I will turn over to Councillor Asabi George, who will finish the public testimony. For folks' education, the way this process works, we either can go straight to a working session if there's any suggestions in language, which I haven't heard today. And I haven't heard also any issues of controversy. So I will review the public testimony if people have suggestion in language or if they have concerns about this. Normally we work that out in a working session is what that's called. When we fine tune the language, then you take that and we vote on it at the city council to then give it to the State House. Again, barring any controversy or any language suggestions, we could skip that working session and just move to a vote. So I wanted to let people know that's how I chair the hearings or the legislation. I want to make sure we work out and iron any wrinkles, and I work that out directly with the chair and with the people who are the proponents and also sometimes the opponents. So, for now, I'm going to turn it over. If Steve is available, we will have him speak for, again, no more than 2 minutes.
It may take a little bit longer using a sign language interpreter.
Very well. I apologize. Yes.
Just so you're aware.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Hello, my name is Steve Weiner. I've worked for Horace Mann School for 21 years now. Thank you for the opportunity to join this discussion. My first retirement statement was the statement that I got was December 31st, 2000. So anyway, the point is I have the paperwork and I didn't get anything before. There were no options. Nothing was explained what 9+2 was or what 11% was. I was just registered. Also in 2000, the interpreter accessibility or reasonable accommodations weren't very frequent during that time. The meetings were all last minute or nothing was in advance. There wasn't always interpreters. Aside from that fact, I received no notification of meetings or retirement options, 9+2 or TARP. So even if I was able to attend the meetings, there was no guarantee that I would have accessible accommodations through the Americans with Disability Act. Therefore, I'm definitely interested and looking forward to getting more information about the TARP and interested in participating in the TARP program. Related to accessibility, even now, last Thursday, when I was prepping for the meeting for this, there was no interpreter for us. No breakout groups, no way that I could even participate. So the disparity really has impacted, the group of deaf and hard of hearing teachers that are belonging to BPS because we've had no access to information. So thank you very much for your time and for listening to me. I appreciate that.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I think we had also John Wilcox. We see you.
I'm John Wilcox, and I would actually like to waive my testimony this evening because Steve Weiner actually has covered everything I was planning on saying. So I would like to give up my time for other people to make their comments. Thank you very much for your attention this evening.
Thank you. And just for anybody who either would like to waive testimony or for time purposes, you can still submit it in writing, and I received that directly, as does the entire city council. Again, the email is ccc.go@boston.gov. And you can just note that I believe it's for hearing number 0981, public testimony, and I can receive it as well as all of my colleagues. So we'll go ahead and go down then the list, and I'm going to go ahead and let Councillor Sabi George set up her rhythm for this and go down in terms of public testimony. I thank you all. I'm very excited about making sure that we provide this equity. I wanted to thank Steve especially for noting that even in preparing for this, there was a level of exclusion, which I find to be unacceptable. But I think it's important we see that and understand. So thank you all, for the teachers especially who are going to testify and who have testified. And that's all I have to say. But I'm again going to turn it over to Councillor Sabi George. And I thank Councillor Braden also for being here throughout the entire time.
Thank you.
Madam Chair. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Councilor Edwards. What I'm going to have, because Christine has the list of those for public testimony, so as she adds them to the room, I will call them out and ask them to give no more than 2 minutes of public testimony, please. As you've heard, the list is fairly long of those offering public testimony. So as Christine lets them in, I will call them out and unmute them. It's always interesting the delay that we get for a moment or two. I'll start with Ann Machino and then Edward Chambers. Ann, as you come in, you can unmute yourself and offer testimony.
Good evening. This is Ann Menachino. Can you hear me?
Yes, Ann. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for taking the time. Thank all of you for taking the time. I am a school nurse. I have been a school nurse for 30 years and I am 68 years of age. I grew up in the city. My children went to the schools in the city. I have been committed to the city. I'm going to talk about a different aspect. I was not notified. What I was told that this benefit was only for teachers. Back then it was from my my building rep, and I called to the union too, and whoever I spoke to told me it was for teachers only. I have been in the inner city for most of my career, which is 47 years. I left a job and took a $23,000 a year cut in 1988 to become a school nurse because I wanted to work with children and give back to my community. When I found out that we were eligible for TAP and we were not told that, I was more than agitated. I feel as a public servant, I have spent my life caring for the children in the city of Boston and Boston residents. I feel that this is something that should be considered for us. Most nurses were told they were not eligible at the time that were working. I will have to work till the age of 71 to reach 80%. And I will tell you right now, with 68, I'm tired. I would really like to retire. And I thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Ann. Thank you for your service to our kids. Next, we have Edward Chambers.
Good evening, Counselor, and thank you very much for sponsoring this for us and for sponsoring this hearing and holding this hearing. My name is Ted Chambers. I'm a 25-year veteran of urban schools. I started in the Lynn Public Schools in 1997, and I transferred to Boston in 2001. I am one of the folks who's been paying 11%, full 11% all along. I never paid 9+2. I didn't know what 9+2 was. I just want to offer the story as testimony of sort of how this process worked. I looked into this before I proposed to my wife back in 2004. I wanted to make sure that I had all of my ducks in a row financially and such. And that's our life together was going to be well planned and thought out. I called the Boston Retirement Board and was told that I was in TARP, that I was paying the full 11%, and I had nothing to be concerned about. And I don't want to point fingers. I really appreciate their support in helping us get this fixed. But there was so much confusion around this. And so many folks who in good faith thought that they were paying into this. I will tell you, as a building rep, I've spoken to a number of folks that are impacted by this who've made it clear they're absolutely willing to pay upwards of $20,000, $25,000 or $30,000 to get back into the system if it means that they can retire at 58 or 59 instead of 64 or 65. So I just thought I'd offer that as my testimony, and thank you very much again.
Thank you very much, Chris. Next, I'm moving up to panelist Amy Carlson for testimony. And R. Guinan or Guinan.
Hi.
Hi, welcome, Amy.
Hi, thank you. I'll try and be quick. My name is Amy Carlson. I'm a physical therapist for the Boston Public Schools. My official hire date was November 91. And Mr. Smith spoke briefly about teaching positions. And I think as a physical therapist, we have a license, but we are not teachers. We don't have a teacher license. We have a physical therapy license. And so I think that we might have been classified similar to the nurses in that case. In January 2001, I continued to be employed by the Boston Public Schools. Unfortunately, I was never notified of my right to participate in the Retirement Plus program. I was not included in the initial offering. The Boston Retirement Board failed in their obligation to notify all Boston Public School employees of the option of participating in the Enhanced Retirement Program. I received no formal notification with details of the option or any applicable deadlines. The information regarding this missed opportunity only came to my attention years later. Had I been notified of the Retirement Plus opportunity, I would have most certainly signed up for the option. Years later, when coworkers discussed the retirement plans, I thought I was enrolled in this program as my paycheck stated 8+2. This is very misleading, as it appears that it would mean that I was enrolled in the Retirement Plus program automatically. I found out this was not the case. Given this inequity, which resulted in an opportunity for some, but not all, it is only fair and equitable that all employees not given proper notification be given the opportunity to participate in the Retirement Plus program retroactively. Of course, proper contributions would be necessary. Thank you so much for all your efforts and your time.
Thank you very much, Amy, for being with us. Next, we have, I know I mispronounced it.
Oh, okay, don't worry. No, everyone does. It's Rose Guinan.
Welcome, Rose.
Thank you again for having this hearing. I started working in Boston Public Schools in 1999. And I was never informed. I never got any type of notification with regard to the TARP program. And I keep track of all of the emails and all of my mail and all kind of everything that I receive. And I'm sure 100% I did not get this information. If I had gotten it, I would have definitely signed up. My paycheck says 9+2, and I found out about 6 months ago that 9+2 does not equal 11. And I was very distraught because it means that I would have to work until I'm 65 years old to get to a decent retirement age. So that's a 5-year difference for me. And I would definitely be willing to pay back or pay into whatever amount is necessary in order to be able to get into the TARP Plus. So whatever the contribution is that I have to make, I will definitely do that.
Thank you very much, Rose. Next, we'll go to Jason and then Miss Giacelli.
Good evening, City Council Chair and City Council members. My name is Jason Reisner, and I'm a second grade teacher at the Elliott K-8 Innovation School in the North End and a resident of Charlestown. I come before you as a classroom teacher and a past school administrator with over 28 years of uninterrupted public school service in Massachusetts. I first learned about Retirement Plus when I started a job in a neighboring school system in 2007. After filling out all of the HR paperwork, the Human Resources Administrative Assistant, asked me why I wasn't enrolled in Retirement Plus. She immediately saw the confusion on my face because I never had heard of it. The HR director decided to enroll me in Retirement Plus until my situation could be looked into further. Ultimately and technically, I paid into Retirement Plus from 2007 to 2009 while working in this neighboring district. Unfortunately, a few years later, I received a letter from the Massachusetts Retirement Board stating my participation had to be reversed and a refund was issued for the 2% that I had contributed for those 2 years. At that point in my career, I'd been a Massachusetts public school educator for 14 years. I was very disappointed and surprised when I realized that I never knew about this election back in 2001 when the state offered this once-in-a-lifetime benefit. When I narrowed down the timeline months of the election window and where I was in my life, I realized that the mailings had never made it to my new address after purchasing my first home in Brighton. Unfortunately, this move was right in the middle of this retirement election window. Since 2009, when I was unexpectedly removed from Retirement Plus, I've been actively and formally pursuing re-enrollment with the hopes of getting reinstated. I appreciate your willingness to consider my situation and hope the council will consider changing the current regulations and enable educators like myself to enroll into Retirement Plus retroactively. And by the way, I'm just the happiest I've ever been working within the Boston Public Schools and find pride every day working with such amazing students and families in this incredible city and school system. Thanks so much for your time.
Thank you very much, Jason, for your service. Next, we have, I know I'm Ms. Piacelli, and then we're going to go to Mr. Jerry Chu. Welcome.
Thank you. My name is Amy Piacitelli, and I am a teacher who last year shockingly discovered I was not enrolled in TARP. I'm uber organized, I'm on top of my to-do list, and I keep receipts, so I started investigating. 20 years ago, BPS teachers received communication that stated, I quote, "Participants in the program are required to contribute at the 11% rate." It's unfathomable to think that I would not have joined, so I checked my receipts. I have saved nearly every paycheck stub for the last 20 years, and I have them from the year 2000, and they say my deduction was 11%. They don't say 9 plus 2, they say 11. Any reasonable person who received a letter and then checked their paycheck and saw 11% would assume they were already in TARP and didn't need to enroll. As it turns out, 11% was incorrect. I was actually being deducted at 9.2, and I acknowledge that, but the average person does not typically sit down and work out calculations every 2 weeks to make sure that the payroll department is doing its job correctly. I was told by the city of Boston that I was being deducted at 11, and I took them at their word. In January of 2001, my check started saying 9 plus 2, my actual deduction rate. And I'm sure it comes as no surprise to anyone that I, like most people on earth, believed 9 plus 2 equals 11. And indeed, when I compare the amount taken out in December 2000, improperly labeled as 11, it's equal to the amount taken in January 2001, correctly labeled as 9 plus 2. So of course I thought it was the same. And to add to the confusion, the program is called Retirement Plus. So this nicknaming plus the error on my paycheck leading up to the election period for Retirement Plus kept me out of a program I most definitely would have joined. And I'm asking now that you give me and other similarly disenfranchised people the chance to buy back in. We're not asking for a handout. I will happily pay the money that should have been taken out for the opportunity to join TARP. And I thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Next, we have Mr. Jerry Chu, and then we'll have Ada Sepulveda.
Councilor Sabi George, if you don't mind me just jumping in quickly. I was just wondering if members of the panel could be dismissed. I don't think that we'll have any further questions for
Oh,
Kath
yeah, no, absolutely.
or Timothy.
I apologize for not saying that before, but Timothy Smith can leave. Kathleen, you're welcome to stay.
Thank you.
But happy to go. Chris, I imagine you won't leave, but you are welcome to.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Kathleen. Thank you, Timothy.
I'm sticking
Thanks,
around.
Kathleen. All right, we'll see you
Thank
around.
you.
We'll be in touch, Kathleen.
Thanks, Michael. All right, Mr. Chu.
Greetings, my name is Mr. Jerry Chu. In regards to the TARP program, to my knowledge, I was never disclosed of any opportunity to do so, nor by any notification in writing, nor by mail, or had any form of documentation stating for me to acknowledge the opportunity of this program. I have been an educator for BPS since 1995, and I came to Boston with 5 years of teaching experience already. I have been sensitive for all these years to ensure that I am aware of any Boston information that may contribute to my teaching career. I learned about this TARP program through conversation with another teacher that it was offered way back and that we missed it. From years of inquiring how I missed it, it was never explained to me in a concrete manner how this information was disseminated, and it's still unclear to me today. So thank you for hearing, and I wish this is something that we can all pursue.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chu. Next, we'll go to Ada Sepulveda, and then Amy Carlson will be after Ada. Thank you.
Hi, thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak. I actually was not prepared to give a speech or to testify, but I am very appreciative of this opportunity to listen to what everyone has to say. And I am very interested in the outcome and the resolution of this meeting and what happens afterwards, because I started working in Boston Public Schools in the year of 1996. I've been working in BPS for with this year, it's going to be 25 years of teaching. So yes, I am very interested in being able to contribute whatever. And I also have been paying 9+2, which, like everybody else has said, it adds to 11. And I also thought that that was already included. But in any case, thank you for this opportunity again. There's many of us out there who are in the same situation. And thank you to all of you who have testified, and let's hope for the best.
Thank you very much, Ada. Next, we have Amy Carlson.
I already went, so.
Oh, I'm sorry, Amy. I'm sorry about that.
That's okay. Thanks.
Which is making me a little silly here. Andrea Griffin, and then Anna Zapata. Andrea Griffin, you can unmute yourself, and then Anna Zapata. All right, last call for Andrea and then Anna. All right, if I could have in the attendees list, if Robin Kirkpatrick could raise her hand, if Anthony Rhodes could raise his hand, and if Cheryl O'Connor could raise her hand, that would be helpful. Excellent. So I'm going to move Robin up to offer testimony, and then Cheryl up to offer testimony. Welcome, Robin, and then Cheryl.
Hi, thank you for the opportunity. Really good to be with everybody tonight. So just very quickly, I'm a proud BPS graduate and have been in the system teaching in BPS for 27 years. My own 3 children have gone through BPS as well. Like many of you, I was not made aware. I actually was also on maternity leave when notice was given, apparently, from what I'm understanding from the comments tonight. And along with many others, the confusion around the 8+2 is for sure a great concern. I won't take up too much more time except to say the fact that so many people did not participate in something that is of such an obvious benefit, I think is itself pretty strong indictment of how kind of poorly the whole thing was rolled out. So I so appreciate you raising this, and I really appreciate hearing from my colleagues across the city and the system, and thank you so much for giving us this opportunity.
Thank you, Robin. Cheryl?
Hi, good evening, councils. My name is Cheryl O'Connor. Grew up in the city and attended the Beethoven School. Started my time in BPS in September of '93. I've been fortunate enough to have been at the Russell in Dorchester since that time. During the beginning of the TARP enrollment period, I was out on maternity leave. And during that time, my colleagues were informed of the TARP opt-in program. I heard nothing of it. After returning to work, at some point, I was told by some colleagues that while I was out, the secretary went around and had a pre-typed form and asked everybody to sign it. She faxed it over. When I heard about it, I faxed a letter in as well and simply forgot about it. It was the new age of MCAS, and I had 2 small children. I assumed my fax went through. For all these years, I thought I was all set because on my deposit statement, I had the 8+2. The +2, as you've been hearing, something that just was a little confusing. My understanding was that I was contributing. It wasn't until years later at a retirement seminar led by Michael McLaughlin that I found out this definitely was not the case. Immediately, I reached out to the retirement board with my issue and asked if there was any way to remedy the situation by buying back or opting back in from that date. The response I received was that nothing could be done, but that I wasn't alone with my issues, and they believed that it was something that should be remedied. Counselors, please help us to make this right. I was uninformed, as were others. The +2 was deceiving. I've dedicated my heart and my career to the children of Boston, and if you could help us out on this, we would so appreciate it. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Cheryl. Then we have George Cheevers, and then if in the attendees list, Phyllis Price, R. Saravellas, and Patricia Senior could raise their hand, I'll admit you to the room. George? George, welcome. All right, while we wait for George, I will promote Roxanne. Roxanne, if you're willing, ready to give testimony, welcome.
Hello, thank you for having me. I'm Roxanne Saravellas. I was first hired as a first-year teacher in the 2000-2001 school year. When I was at Court Street completing my paperwork as a new hire, I was a fresh-faced 22-year-old right out of college. It was explained to me that because I was new, I was going to be paying 11%, and so my check would say 9 plus 2%. Because of this, I believed until just last year that I was part of Retirement Plus. So imagine my shock then to hear that this wasn't the case, that I'd have to work an additional 4 years for a total of 40 years in the classroom to earn the same retirement benefits as some of my colleagues who only need to complete 30 years of service to earn their 80%. Being a new hire, I'd received nothing from the retirement board during my first year. The backlog of updating addresses of new hires in an antiquated system could possibly be to blame, but I was never contacted at school either. Nowhere is there paperwork that says that I declined to be part of Retirement Plus. The retirement board was really lax in their efforts, and no such paperwork exists. So due diligence would have required each teacher to acknowledge that they had opted in or opted out, but there was no due diligence at all, and that leaves many of us who fell through these gaping cracks in the retirement plan. I've dedicated more than half my life to educating the children of Boston and plan to continue until retirement. I'm not asking for a free handout. I'd gladly pay back whatever I owe into the system. All I ask is the opportunity that was withheld from me 21 years ago. Thank you for your consideration in making this right.
Thank you very much, Roxanne, for being here this evening. Next, we have George Cheevers. George, welcome. George, please unmute yourself. Try again. Try one more time.
Okay,
There we
good
go.
evening. Sorry about that.
That's fine. Welcome.
Thank you. Not to reiterate what people have already said, but the information that I was lacking, I was hired late into the system. I'm a lifelong resident of Dorchester, except for a couple of years of teaching English in Japan. At the age of 39, I had had a previous state position in my 20s that I did not know that I would be eligible for repurchase. So as a relatively new hire with only 3 years in the system at the time of the 2001 offering of the TARP, I looked at what Richard Stutman had written in the BTU newspaper, and I fit one of the scenarios that he presented rather well. And it didn't make economic sense for me to do that. So what I would subsequently learn, however, is that I could repurchase that time for the job, state job, and combined with a couple of several years of full-time sub-teaching in a long-term position, that those two scenarios radically changed the decision calculus that I would have made. But at no time did I hear from anyone at the who was propounding the 2001 offering that, you know, you could look into your past and see if there was anything there that would change the whole decision-making calculus. And so I respectfully ask that the members of the council, you know, give consideration to those of us who didn't really have full information when we were confronted with this decision back in 2001. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, George. Next, we have Marie Novicki, and then Patricia Senior and Phyllis Price. Marie?
Hi.
Hi, welcome.
Thank you so much for hearing our concerns over this issue. I'm a school nurse and I've been hired since 1996. And around the time that this TARP came out, there was a lot of confusion. I was, of course, only one nurse in the school, and the teachers were talking and buzzing. People were confused as to decisions, what to do. I did reach out to, I didn't get anything in writing, but I did get some kind of notice that this was going on and teachers were talking. So I reached out to representatives of the union to ask what's going on, can we do this? And I was informed that teachers weren't included in this. As much as I thought it was unfair, I said, well, those are the rules, what could I do? Then fast forward 2 years later, when I saw my paycheck's been saying 9+2, and I thought, oh, I guess we're getting it. So when I started hearing more talk about retirement plus, again, I look at my paycheck and I said, oh, well, I'm so lucky. I'm so glad that I'm in here, because here I am, I'm 9+2. And it wasn't until recently when we had that hearing, which I think that Mr. Leon started to look into, I found out that no, you are not retirement plus. And that yes, nurses were eligible, which made sense to me because we're active union members. We have the same requirements. As teachers, we must be certified, we must attain a master's. And so there was a lot of misinformation around that time, a lot of confusion, and I really appreciate that you're looking into this so that this matter could be corrected. And I speak on behalf of myself and other nurses. I also speak on behalf of my sister, who's a teacher, working prior to me, at least 4 years prior to me. And she, I believe, is the 8+2. And she was under the same assumption and confusion that she was getting the retirement plus, because we didn't know it was, we thought plus you're into the program. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you very much, Marie. Next, we have Patricia, and then Phyllis, and then Josephine. Patricia?
Hi, thank you very much for taking me on this call. So I just have a similar situation as most other people have already spoken about. I was hired in 1999 and I've been contributing at a 9+2. So I just assumed all along when I was at the 11% until Michael McLaughlin had come to our school and we began talking about retirement. And he informed me that I wasn't at the 11%. So at this point, if I had the opportunity to pay back into it, I would certainly do that because it would mean that I could retire 4 years earlier than I am scheduled to. So thank you for your consideration.
Thank you very much, Patricia. Phyllis, and then Josephine.
Hi, first, I just want to say thank you so much for hearing this, for taking care of us, for giving this a shot. My name's Phyllis Price. I'm one of the nurses at Boston Latin Academy. So, you know, for years, the nurses were told we weren't part of the package. The nurses just were not included in this. This was just a teacher's thing. We didn't receive notification. There is a mass amount of nurses who are not in this. because we believed we weren't part of it until maybe a year or two ago, where I asked to see the language that specifically excluded nurses, and it wasn't there. And it became obvious that the nurses were always supposed to have been included in this and just weren't. I speak on behalf of myself and many other nurses. We thought we were included. A lot of us have 8+2 or 9+2. We thought we were seeing the plus in our paychecks, and that meant we were included. Until a year or two ago, when we asked to see the specific language, is the first for many of us to understand that we weren't included as we planned our retirements. And again, I just want to thank you all for everything you're doing on behalf of us. Good luck.
Thank you very much, Phyllis. Welcome, Josephine.
Hi, Anissa, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay. Mine is a somewhat different situation than most have been speaking about today. So I just wanted to read quickly my written statement. I'm going to read it as quickly as I can. There's a lot of information in it, so bear with me. My name is Josephine Tishoni. I am currently the library media specialist at East Boston High School. I graduated East Boston High in 1983 and been working at East Boston High since 1984. I held various positions from secretary to para to substitute to career specialist to teacher to registrar to now library media specialist. I have been at East Boston High for 36 years. I was in the classroom at the time of the 11% initiative and I signed into it. My check reflected the 11% from 9+2. However, I didn't realize that because I signed into this program that I was unable to advance myself professionally. I took the job as registrar without ever being told that those years would not count into this initiative. I was registrar for 15 years. However, looking back at my pay stubs from that time, which I have every single one of them, I noticed that the 11% remained intact for the first 7 years or so, and then it changed midstream from 11% back to 9+2. This was done without any notice given to me or without my consent. There was no questions asked. It was just done. Like the saying goes, here today, gone tomorrow. During that crucial time, I wasn't even aware that anything had changed. As I said, I only looked into it when I realized this a few years ago while speaking about my retirement with Chris Leone at my school. So because I recently learned about what happened, I myself couldn't do anything about it. I was told, as I already mentioned, that the registrar position or title doesn't count towards the retirement program. However, I never lost my teaching certificate. I was always still an eligible teacher and was always licensed. I wasn't told it was due to the fact that the registrar doesn't hold a certified license as a teacher does, so therefore it doesn't count. Well, I'm here to say that even though I was listed as a registrar, I was never made permanent in that position. I was always listed as an acting registrar and teacher on assignment. I was not only doing the job of registrar, but I was also in the classroom teaching a class called Skills for Success, a school to work program in which I assisted in the development of that curriculum. I taught that class for the entire time as I was listed as registrar. So although my title changed, my work did not, and my license never went away. I was always still certified as a teacher. I now needed to leave the position of registrar and also leave my pay cut, which was a 10% pay cut, because I needed now to take a different position in order to try to gain back the years that I missed in the classroom. I applied for library media specialist, which I currently hold, minus the 10% pay. And also, I remained in the school system in order to increase my years now to 20 in the classroom. I would have already been retired by now. I should have retired last year. However, the math to me was already accomplished, and I feel I'm being punished for taking a higher paying position and advancing myself professionally. And I feel that I'm being punished trying to assist my school taking on the responsibility of the registrar position as well as teaching at the same time. I feel to me it's an insult to our teaching profession. Our teaching license never goes away regardless what position you hold. And I think it was an insult to me as well. I don't believe that anyone just walking off the street would be able to become registrar. Such positions are usually filed in-house within the school or within at least the BPS, but maybe I'm wrong. But the main issue here now is I don't even know if I'm still in the program, because when I signed up for it, someone changed my percentage back and forth now twice without my consent. And I don't even know if I'm still in the program now that I'm back to 11%. So it's changed and not changed and changed back. So I'm really confused. I should have been retired by now. And I'd like to try to get to the bottom of this if I can. And I appreciate all the help that everyone has been giving, and especially Chris Leone and Anissa. Absolutely never thought it would be like this after 36 years in the Boston Public Schools.
Thank you, Josephine. Thanks for sharing with us today. We have Gilberto Rivera and then June Grumer. Welcome.
Good evening. Can you hear me? Yes. Well, thank you so much. First of all, for listening to us, for advocating for us, the whole city council, Chris and Michael. I came into the system in 1992 as a 22-year-old graduate of UMass Lowell. I've always wanted to be a teacher since 1984, and I knew that Boston was going to be my first and only job, and the only job I ever applied to. I started off as a student teacher in 1992 and then as a substitute in December. I became a building rep in 1993 when I got my first job at the Donald McKay School in East Boston. I was very involved in the union, and I remember that these seminars, and I really want to thank Tim Smith for his chronology of events. When you're using words as statute and law and all of these things, anytime you do any kind of work in the courts or in the legislature, there needs to be some kind of accountability of how you communicate to the other side or people who benefit from things. I kept very meticulous records as well. I'm in the process of moving, and I think I found the box of pay stubs and letters. At that time, one mass emailing, and I remember the envelopes. They said the Boston teacher retirement. And that was the same envelope that our statements would come in, and I would save them and I would purge them once a year. When I did my purging, after not attending any of the seminars, because when I was informed about these seminars, people said, oh, this is if you were going to retire within 5 years. In 1999 to 2000, I was 29, I was 30 years old. And to Chris's statement about rich or famous, I was touring with a couple of groups, but my first love was also teaching. So I was performing in groups, I was going around in the summers, but I was paying attention to my mail. And I did finally find that envelope that looked just like a regular statement. It didn't say time sensitive, urgent, please open, you must reply before any given time. And I missed it. And I was a building rep. I was there at the Boston Teachers Union since 1993. And at that time, we were told that the seminars were for people that were retiring within 5 years. As a 29, 30-year-old, I didn't know that I was supposed to be signing up for TARP because the letter was not registered or certified, and we were not duly notified in a responsible manner, especially something that's a statute and a law. And I really thank you for listening to us, advocating for us, and giving us the opportunity to pay back what we owe, because we are not just given retirement, we work for it. And I think I could save the system just alone with the shaving off of 5 years at $100,000. You do the math. I would love to give that back to the Boston school system and the city and the state. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rivera. Ms. Gruner, and then we'll go to Suzanne DeMarco. Unmute yourself. There you go.
All right, thank you so much. I'm trying to balance a few things here. So I want to thank everyone, the City Council, for hearing us all out. My story is very much the same as everyone else. I started teaching in Boston Public Schools in the year 2009. Prior to that, I had been teaching in other districts within Massachusetts as well. I was put in at 9+2, thinking that I was in the retirement plus system. Very excited about that. I know there was a couple other members who talked about being meticulous about keeping paperwork. which I am too, I started the process of buying back years of service. And when I did go to the retirement board, I was told that no, I was not enrolled in the TARP program, and that I too would have to work another 3 to 5 years in order to get the 80%. Having learned that, I was completely deflated and thought I was actually almost physically sick about the whole thing, thinking like, oh my goodness, you know, how is this going to work? And so it was really disturbing and very upsetting, but I feel like we're being heard now. I'm hoping that this will be rectified and we will all be able to partake in, you know, again, paying back what we need to pay back to the system. It's not a handout, and certainly appreciate everyone's time hearing this out. And I look forward to the good news. And so does she. Huh. All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you, baby. All right, Suzanne DeMarco, welcome. And then we'll have Lee Franti and then Miss Sands. Suzanne?
Hi, thank you so much. My name is Suzanne DeMarco, and I've been a speech and language pathologist for the Boston Public Schools for the past 30 years. I'm a Boston resident, and all 3 of my adult children went to the Boston Public Schools. My story is a collective one. We didn't know. The retirement board sent out 858 emails to the members that did not sign up for TARP in the given 6-month period to notify us of our situations. At the Curley K-8 school where I work, out of a group of 7 teachers that should have been invited to the meeting, only 3 of us received the email. So I think the 858 is even underreported. And just to put things in perspective, this is nearly 10% of the Boston educators working in BPS right now. We didn't know. What reason could there be to not opt into TARP? We're a group of intelligent people who are paying the district's mistake with years of our lives. Personally, it has added 4 years to my age of my original retirement date. Why wouldn't 800 people not sign up for TARP? Because we didn't know. I found 2 people in my age bracket who did opt into TARP. One had a family member who was worked in the retirement office, and the other was because one person at the Jackson Man went around and told all the teachers to make sure that they knew. What was really confusing is the city allows vendors to go in to the schools and speak with the teachers about 403B accounts, which we signed up for early. Since these vendors were approved by the city, teachers had no reason not to believe what they told them. Each time I've met with them for over 20 years, they would take out a chart, they would look at my age, and they would look at my years of service and tell me that I would retire at age 59. This was going by the rule of 90. On Monday, at the last retirement meeting that you hosted, we found out that the rule of 90 was not in place anymore. Guess what? We didn't know that either. There are many ways the situation could have been avoided. First, during the 6-month period of TARP, the Boston Public Schools could have sent us a certified letter, which is how they disseminated important information at that time. 2, Boston Public Schools could have shared the information with school leaders and department heads to make sure the people, that the superiors, that the employees knew that the superiors could give this information out. BPS could have made sure, BTU could have made sure that members knew about this opportunity by tasking the union representatives with bringing this information to people at their schools and making sure they collected the signatures of those they notified. Also, individual schools could have posted this information next to the sign-in sheet, which was another way we used to receive important information. I am not a meticulous person. I have not kept all my pay stubs like a lot of people. And if there was only 20 people citywide that were in this position, I would blame myself and I would be very sad. But the fact that there are so many people in this situation, I can just say, we just didn't know. I didn't sign up because I didn't know. And I know a lot of people out there are in the same boat as me. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Mr. Marco. Lee Franti and then Ms. Sands.
Hello, everyone. My name is Lee Franti. This is my 21st year teaching in the Boston Public Schools. Like someone you heard earlier said, I started my career in September of 2000. I pounded the pavement and walked from school to school from Charlestown to East Boston, knocking on every school door. And I ended up getting a job as a substitute teacher at the McKay School in East Boston. Right now, I teach sixth grade at the Murphy School. I have lived in the city now for 20 years, and I plan to remain in the city. And like you've heard before, I started as a substitute. Substitutes were not included within this group, but luckily on 12/1 of 2000, I was hired as a first-year teacher and was first-year provisional. So obviously, as we heard earlier in testimony, a lot of this information was being disseminated in November of 2000, and that's when I would have been a substitute teacher at that point. But in December, I became a full-time teacher, and then through January, through, of course, for the end of the year and so forth, I've been a first year. I was a full-time teacher, part of the force. I just have to say that even at 22, even as someone who was just hired that year, I did take advantage of a 403B option when a salesman came into the school that first year teaching and opted out of, opted into a program to take $150 a paycheck out for a retirement that would be in addition to, of course, your pension, even though I knew I had a pension and I didn't know if I was going to stay a teacher for one more year or one more day. I just knew I loved what I was doing. As long as people wanted me there, I was there. So it's been 20 years. I like everyone else have a 9.9+2. Thought I was in the program. I didn't realize that I was not, and I just assumed that I was in it, and then I wasn't a few years ago until I found out. And I'm on board with everyone else. I want to thank you all for your time and thank you for doing this for us, because I totally would have opted in. If I opted into an additional retirement benefit that first year, I know I would have opted in to this kind of a benefit, especially being brand new and saying, look, my future is bright. And I've stayed in Boston. I love Boston. I'm not going anywhere, and I'll pay my fair share because I believe in this city and I believe in what you all are doing. So please help us out, and we thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Lee. Ms. Sands, and then we're going to go to Win Freed. Welcome. Unmute, please, Ms. Sands.
Thank you for hearing us tonight. I really appreciate it. I've been sick over this for at least 10 years, knowing that I did not get in on this because I was out on maternity leave. I have been a teacher. I've lived in Boston, mostly my whole life, and then got married and came here to Quincy, not far from Boston. And this is my 31st year. I was 21 years old, graduating from UMass Boston, going for my master's through the Rollins Griffith Teacher Center, which Boston offered. And now in January, I'll be 31 years, 10 years in Roxbury and at the Mason School, which I loved, and then 20 years at the Murphy now. So I feel like I have dedicated my life to these children. And when I see the parents, I see the children of the children that I taught. It's such a testimony to me when I see them, and I feel so proud to be a teacher. And I think that it's been great what Boston offers to Generation volunteers and to student teachers from where I graduated, to be able to bring them in and teach them how to be a good teacher and hope that they stay in Boston. But to just kind of briefly say that I was on maternity leave. I had my son in March of 2001, and I went out in February, and I didn't come back until September. So I did not know. And, like Lee Franti, I had invested in my 401ks and the Roths and all that stuff. And I just feel that if I knew about it, I would have definitely enrolled. And when I did get in touch with the union afterwards, they just said, no, it's not being offered. And so as soon as this was coming of age and to be a part of this, I wanted to be able to just say that, like all of the other people, the 857 people, we have worked so hard for Boston, and we love Boston kids. And I want to be able to retire. I will be one of those people that you talk makes over $100,000 and would like to go out at 58. enjoy traveling and enjoying the fruits of the labor of a beautiful, beautiful career with wonderful educators. And I so appreciate that everything you're doing. And I hope that it passes here and then goes up to the state and passes there. So thank you so much for hearing me tonight.
Thank you very much, Ms. Sands. Next, we have Wynn, and then we'll go to Jean O'Leary. Wynn?
Yes, thank you very much for this opportunity. I've been an occupational therapist with Boston Public Schools since 1991, and I have 4 prior years of service in another Massachusetts school. When the Retirement Plus TARP email came to me and was also read by my husband, a very smart person, neither of us understood the meaning of the message or how it might apply to me exactly. Had the importance of the message been better communicated, rather than so poorly communicated in a singular message, without emphasis on how it would apply to me, my action on it would have been completely different. The presentation was unfair and possibly made intentionally unclear to the target audience. The matter should be reopened as it affects me dearly. I strongly urge the reinstatement of the opportunity to participate at no matter what the fee is. I've loved my career. I'm going to be 65 this December, and I would like to be able to give back in another way. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Wynn. Next, we have Jean O'Leary, and then we're going to go to Miss O'Connell, Miss Breege Walsh O'Connell after. Jean, sorry, my screen just moved around on me.
I'm
Jean
not,
O'Leary, you with us?
yeah, I'm not testifying.
Oh, very good. Thank you for being here. Breege, you're up.
Same story with everybody, so.
No, thank you very much, Jean.
Okay.
Breege. Unmute yourself.
Hi, thank you for giving me.
We just lost Miss Walsh O'Connell. We'll bring her back in a minute. Cheryl, are you ready to testify? Cheryl Ashley?
Good evening. I am so excited to be here with you guys tonight, and I'm just really, really happy because I've been waiting for this opportunity for such a long time. So I'm excited that the opportunity and the chance has come about for us to at least have this conversation and possibly get this thing done. When the Retirement Plus came into play, I was into school with a cohort of teachers, and I think a couple of people got the notification, and we all got in a room and we were talking about it. What does this mean? We were trying to make sense of it and understand. Some people didn't get notification. We compared notes. We called downtown. We called our, we talked to our union rep and came to the understanding that we were like all enrolled into this Retirement Plus program. Well, lo and behold, like many have said, it came to pass that, the cohort that I was in, some of them had the TARP and some of them didn't. We're still working. Some of them are gone. And, nobody really understands, honestly, how we were separated, because we worked through it together. We called together. We talked about it together. And I'm just excited that there is a chance, because it's, it seems like we've been working towards this end for so long. Thank you to Mike McLaughlin and all the other people who have really pushed for this moment. And I do hope that it comes to fruition for all of us. Thank you so much for this opportunity to approach this situation.
Thank you, Cheryl. Breege, we'll take you back.
Thank you.
Welcome. I don't know what happened there.
I
Thank
don't
you,
know
Cheryl.
either. What do I do? Oh, okay.
You're unmuted, but you're not on video.
Okay, hold on one second.
Take your time. And then while you're preparing, anyone that's in the wait room, we've gone through the list and I have found the names of those that were signed up to testify, who are present. Some of you still haven't shifted from your BPS number to a name. So if you would like to testify, please raise your hand and we'll get you going forward. Welcome, Breege.
Okay, I don't know where I am. Okay, I see my name, but I don't see the option to show my face, but that's okay. You can hear me.
We can hear you. We just can't see you.
Okay, awesome. I'm so impressed with everyone's number of years in service here tonight, and we're all dedicated and we're here even after work hours. So that's awesome. Thank you for letting me speak tonight. And I'm here, just like as everyone else has been, to share my understanding of the Retirement Plus. I vaguely remember any conversation about options to convert retirement deductions from 9+2 to 11% while a first grade teacher at the Charles Sumner School, where I have been since 1997. The fact that 9+2 does not equal 11 is very misleading to a first grade teacher. The inconsistent distribution of notices regarding the Retirement Plus initiative caused a great deal of confusion for me and for my colleagues. Not being guided through the proper channels has prevented me and hundreds of other educators in the system, as we've heard tonight, to take advantage of this early retirement, thus preventing younger educators to walk through the doors and continue to make an impact on the lives of children. It is my hope that the home rule petition will prevail. Thank you again for this opportunity to share my thoughts on this important issue.
Thank you very much. Now we have Dr. Williams and then Nilsa Reese. Anyone else that's a participant that would like to testify? This is your final moment to raise your hand. Dr. Williams?
Yes, hi. My name is Eleanor Williams, and I'm the inclusion specialist at the King School. I started in 1991 at the age of 21, and I did not receive notice of this opportunity. In 2001, I went for my doctorate at Harvard, and I took a sabbatical for 1 year. And then maybe a few years later, 2 years later, I took another. I didn't hear anything about this. In 2000, and then I was teaching, I was still in the classroom. And then in 2008, I left Boston Public Schools. I worked for the state. I served as an adjunct professor, that kind of a thing. And I was out of BPS for about 6 years. Then in 2014, I returned as the inclusion specialist. I was in it and I'm still there, but for about 5 years. And then, I'm thinking, okay, I'm looking to retire, at the age of in my 50s or something like that. Let me call the retirement board and, just see how many years do I have? Help me to calculate, that kind of a thing. And I noticed this 9+2. And I said, what's that? And they told me that, and then I started asking and they were saying that there's a difference. There's the TARP and there's the regular. And I'm like, what is that? Come to find out, unfortunately, I didn't know. And the money was being taken out once I returned back to Boston Public Schools after having left for 6 years. So beforehand, I didn't know anything about it. When I returned, I guess they put me under new, I don't know what it was. And I was paying into the TARP. And when I approached them, they took it before the board and they told me, I'm sorry, we're going to have to fix this. This was our mistake. Fixing meant giving me the money back. But no, you cannot be a part of TARP. So I'm looking to retire on the early side, if I can. It would have been 30 years if I didn't leave Boston Public Schools. I'm up to 21, but TARP would allow me to retire at a pretty reasonable age. You give a lot. I work at the school. I've been working in schools that are very high needs, and I'm in it. I roll my sleeves up. I wanted to give back to my community. That's why I'm doing the work that I do. But I would like to enjoy my senior years in another way. So that's my story. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Williams. Nilsa Reese, welcome, Nilsa.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. My name is Nilsa Reese.
I know many of you who have testified. I've run across you at many different schools, and my story is also very similar. I joined Boston Public School in 1998 after graduating from Boston College with my master's. I did 1 year in Newton in 1997, which I did buy back once I came back to Boston. But I joined at 9+2% in 1998. But I resigned from Boston in 2001 at the end of June. I went to Brockton Public Schools, and then I came back to Boston Public Schools in 2005, and I was enrolled at 11%. And a few years later, I was sent a refund check just saying that I was overpaying. And again, I didn't think anything about that, and I cashed my check and kept on going. And then in 2008, I transferred within a department in special education. And then again, was informed that I was mistakenly placed at 11% and was put at 9+2%. So it's been a few times that this has happened to me. In 2015, I was working with a financial advisor because I was expecting my first child. I have a 4-year-old and a 4-month-old at my age, believe it or not. Started a little late, but in 2015, I called the retirement system and spoke to someone. And she later sent me a letter, which was very helpful in crafting my testimony because I had a good timeline. In 2015 is when I actually found out about Retirement Plus / TARP. I had never heard about that before. Because I say that because I keep my paperwork like many of you do. And in 2006, a year after I came back from Brockton Public Schools, I saved the paperwork that had the guidelines, and there was no such thing as Retirement Plus ever on their guideline. They give you from the years when retirement started all the way to present, and the last percentage that anybody could contribute was 11%. And I had been taken to 9+2. So at any point, I was told it was a one-time opportunity, you cannot enroll, and that was it. So since 2015, I've been running, after anybody who can tell me anything about re-enrolling, because that added 4 more years. Instead of me being able to retire at 57, I would retire at 61. And I really want to be able to be available to my children as they grow and not, continue to be, working until in my 60s. I went to Revere in 2017, Revere Public Schools, and I came back in 2018, just a very short leave. And I'm currently paying 11%. And I know for a fact that check, for the 4th time, I'll get a check saying you're overpaying. So I really appreciate everybody who's working on this issue and hope that we can clarify, everybody's situation and place back where we belong. And we can enjoy retirement at whatever lifestyle we have and want to, enjoy with our families. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Nilsa. And then last, because there's no other hands. Oh no, there's one more raised. I'm sorry, a few more raised in the box. But this is your last opportunity to raise your hand. We'll go to Brenda Mostich, and then I'll let a few more into the room. Brenda, welcome.
Hi, thanks. And you got the name right. And the last name, yeah. So my name is Brenda Mostich. I'm a 23-year veteran with BPS. I'm a speech language pathologist, and I started in 1997. About 6 months after I returned from maternity leave was when TARP, I guess, opened up. And so, yes, I was a new mom, but it was brought to my attention. And, doing my due diligence, I went and I asked about it, and I was told, no, you have 9+2, that's 11, you're all set, you don't have to do anything, you're enrolled. And so, being that responsible new parent, since I thought retirement was all set and I was on track there, then, I did my 403B and my life insurance. And then within the last year comes to my attention, no, you're not in the 11%. 9+2 is not 11. So I'm in very much the same situation as a lot of other people that have testified tonight. And I just, it's frustrating to have had this misinformation. And I would just really appreciate anything that people are able to do to help us try and open this up again. If it is something that's available, I'm more than happy to pay into the program.
Brenda, thank you very much for being with us. And last for public testimony this evening is Lisa Seymour Terry. Lisa?
Thank you. For
Welcome.
listening. I'm a little bit different because I started teaching at the very young age of 20. I grew up in Boston. I went through Boston Public Schools. And if I had signed up for the program and I was aware of it, I would have left now and I would be enjoying my retirement. Unfortunately, that is not the case. I am still teaching, very competent, and I still, enjoy my job. However, I would love to receive my retirement, but I also think because of the era that I should not have to pay the interest. I have no problem paying the difference in terms of the percentage, but because of my investment of years, which is 35 years in the Boston Public Schools and 2 years in the penal institution, I agree with paying the difference, but not the interest. That's my only conflict with this. Other than that, I support all the teachers, and it may actually not even benefit me at this point in time. And if I do leave next year and I don't take the full 80% retirement, I'm just wondering, would I be able or be compensated to make that retroactive?
Great question. We'll add it to the notes. Thank you, Lisa, for being here with us. And thank you for your 35 years of service. I think maybe of the group you had the most.
Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much for being here. So with the conclusion of public testimony, I appreciate everyone here this evening. I appreciate my colleagues for their questions and their few offers of early support on this effort. As Councillor Edwards, the chair of the Government Ops Committee, mentioned earlier, she typically does have a working session following this hearing. Was uncertain if that was necessary in this case. Where it is a holiday week, we don't have a general council meeting this week. So I will request that this be before the council, if not the 18th, the following Wednesday, if she so wishes to have a working session. I think that it's reasonable to think that if it's not the 18th, it would be the 25th, which would be our hearing. I don't even know when Thanksgiving is. Anyway, so and I do appreciate her indicating that she wants to move this along quickly, as the longer haul will certainly be up at the State House. So with that, there's no meeting on the 25th. So I will impress upon the chair that time is certainly of the essence, and I'd prefer to move this before the council of the whole on the 18th instead of waiting until December 2nd. But that is certainly at the will and the desire of the chair. But she did indicate a general sense of positivity at the beginning of this hearing. Anyway, so with that, I appreciate everyone here this evening. We do have loads and loads of public testimony that we will compile and go through, as well as the actuary report. I'm not sure how to say that. I see that Mr. Leone has unmuted himself. If he has additional comment, please do so before we adjourn this meeting.
I just wanted to thank the two of you for taking the ball and running with it. I think it's been a struggle for a lot of teachers to get someone to listen to them. And thank you, Mike, and thank you, Anissa. I think, Anissa, you being a colleague in the building certainly helped because I was able to reach out to you. So I appreciate your friendship and your willingness to take this on. And certainly, Mike, it's been a crazy road for the last 2 years, but I'm hoping that this ends up being a positive thing for everybody. So thank you both.
Absolutely my pleasure. And 13 years of service at East Boston High. I was hired just after this would have been available to me, and I'm now out of the system. So it doesn't benefit me in any which way. I suppose I should have said that for the record earlier in today's hearing. But I'm grateful, Chris, for your service, and especially all the teachers at East Boston High, but the teachers across the district. Mike, thank you for your work, and we'll certainly have more to do. With that, we are adjourned. Thank you, Central staff, for helping us